What's up, everyone? It's a Saturday afternoon, and I thought, why not go on and stream? Because, well, that sounded better in my head. Oh, I never plan these things out. Although, we have something a little different today. Was going to do the normal content on 06/45/2017. I decided, no. Let's go a little further back. Let's go somewhere closely related, but a little different. In this case, I decided to look up and just see what I could find on Dwayne Gish. Because of course we're all familiar with the name thanks to the Gish Gallop. But I just wanted to see, let's find a video. Let's see a debate. Let's see what Dwayne Gish was about. So let me minimize myself. We're gonna look at this Gish Doolittle debate from back in the era of analog everything. Fair warning: the audio has a constant whine in the background. It's just gonna be there. So if it annoys you, I apologize. Welcome to old VHS tapes, baby. Oh man, them some crunchy graphics. I honestly, of course, again, it's a soft spot from having grown up where this was what I saw on a lot of older tapes and the like. But this formatting, it's not Scanimate. I don't think it's Scanimate, but it's some similar later process. Um, Generate these graphics. It's just there's a wonderful charm to it. Too bad everything that follows is going to be hot garbage. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I actually kind of like this intro. It screams 80s in the best way. Oh, if Dwayne Gish doesn't come out in a members only jacket, I'm gonna be very disappointed.
Those of us in the scientific community regard evolution as the only theory that ties the diverse discipline of biology into a meaningful whole.
Is it just me, or did the quality suddenly go back to 1950s esque? Like, seriously, this looks like VHS transfers of film footage from the 50s and 60s that I would have seen growing up on documentaries on VHS. Let me tell you, being a kid and watching documentaries on the Gemini and Apollo programs from poorly transferred VHS stock um, made space a little creepy, especially the moon. Footage from Apollo 8 looks kind of terrifying. I still have that tape somewhere. May digitize it someday. I still remember the frames that creep me out, but that's a side story. Let's keep going. I got a lot of old VHS stuff to digitize when I finally get an opportunity.
The theory of evolution is as important for the biological sciences as the atomic theory is for the physical sciences.
There is an increasing number of scientists, both men and women, in science who are moving away from the acceptance of broad-scale evolution. One of the reasons certainly is that the evidence for the individual is just not convincing. But I am convinced that creation is the only intelligent, rational position with regard to origin questions.
Of course you are, because you're a fucking creationist. That's the only way. It can't be all the natural processes out there. Nope. It's got to be God did it, because it's all too complicated. And we're back in the stupid ages, so we know even less than the guys today. You know, the today that's 30, 40 years in the future. Not often.
This is the Ray County Courthouse in Dayton, Tennessee. In this courthouse,
Oh God, they're in my home state. They're in my home state.
56 years ago, the famous Scopes trial was conducted. It came to be known later as the monkey trial. A school teacher was being tried for teaching.
Well, Tubian, we didn't go. The mysterious they went. And they totally want you to know about it. See, the cover-up is that it's secretly a cover-up on the cover-up. They've covered up the cover-up with the truth of them actually going. See, that's how they get you.
Evolution against the law in the state of Tennessee at that time. It really developed into a debate between two prominent Americans, Clarence Darragh, a criminal lawyer from Chicago, an agnostic who did not believe in scientific or biblical creation, and William Jennings Bryan, an orator who 3 times ran for president of the United States. He was a fundamentalist Christian who believed in scientific, in biblical creation. It was quite a debate. Today, we're talking about the debate that is going on between scientific creation, biblical creation, versus evolution.
Who the hell is this guy? Did he get introduced? Is he the same guy I was talking earlier? It sounds like a completely different guy. It looks like a completely different guy. Am I just losing my mind 2.5 minutes in? I mean, I probably am, but, I don't know. Let's keep going.
Stay tuned.
From Liberty Mountain in Lynchburg, Virginia, the following program is a special presentation of the Old Time Gospel Hour. Now,
give me that old time gospel hour. I'm going to take a nap. God, oh, man. See, that right there gave me horrible flashbacks to weekends where there was nothing on. And, there was literally nothing to do some weekends. Then I got a Nintendo Entertainment System, and I was much happier. So we're talking when I was, 5-ish.
now, here is the moderator for this evening's Creation versus Evolution debate, Dr. Jerry Falwell.
Good evening. Since
Yep, Tubian, you guessed right.
mankind came into existence, he has asked such questions as,
Like, to be clear, there's names I recognize being brought up, but I don't actually know much about any of these people. I just know tangentially some names in the Christian, creationist theologic sphere of things, because I honestly care so little about the active discussion, because I find the fact that it's even a quote-unquote debate to be absolutely absurd. One of those things you just don't dignify with a response, and yet here I am doing these videos. And for those of you out in the audience who, not you guys, the regulars, but the randos who are like, oh, why don't you actually discuss, the topic? Why don't you discuss the creation and stuff? Here's your video, I guess. We're still just going to be seeing how Dwayne Gish behaves. It's really what it is a character study on that nut job. I was going to look at some Ron Wyatt videos, but I did not find anything that seemed good at a first glance, and I didn't want to waste time hunting. I just wanted to get to something.
as, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going?
I believe my buddy Prince Watercress discovered a comedic YouTube video that's an edit of Charlie Brown many, many years ago that explains the answer to that question of where are you going? I'm going over here. I doubt Prince Watercress will ever watch this video because he doesn't have time to watch my content. But if he does, he knows what I'm referring to. If not, I'll try to remember to link that down in the description if I can find that video, because it's an ancient one. The video is almost as old as Kent's subscribe image in his slides.
The origin of species, where did I come from, has been another question that man has debated for
Where did I come from? Where did I go? Where did I come from? Species Joe.
nearly as long as he has been asking those philosophical questions. In fact, the answers to those questions determine not only how men and women view themselves, but how they view others as well.
Does it really, though? Or is it a matter of a person's view of self-worth is, in a lot of cases, so fragile that realizing that they're not something special and some magic sky daddy isn't obsessed with everything they do and thinks they're the greatest thing ever, except they simultaneously think they're complete scum, but don't get me started on that. Maybe the realization that we're yet another facet of life, an emergent property of the planet being the way it is. And that if you break it down abstractly, that's as far as things go. It's not reality's fault that they can't handle that. See, I don't have a problem rationalizing that because that is the fact, apparently. But what I do with my life, what I try to do with it, is my own choice. I set my own values in this. If the religious people can't do that without their fairy tale, that's their problem, not ours. And we shouldn't lie about reality to suit the fact that some people, sorry, are just too incompetent to figure out their own purpose in life. That means so much to you, you should be able to figure it out, regardless of what deity there is or isn't. I just don't get it. But that's always the question. It's always like, well, if there's no God, then why are we here? What's the purpose of life? It's like, whatever the hell you want it to be. That's what it is anyway. You just do what you want to do. If what you want to do happens to be, worship and placate some magic sky daddy you believe is out there, okay, cool, but I think you're just wasting your time. But whatever. Let's continue.
Some religious people have felt that science is the enemy of religion. Some scientists have believed that religion is the enemy of science.
No, let's say religion is the enemy of reality and vice versa. And since science focuses on reality, it's caught in the crossfire, you could say.
Both camps have erected a high wall between them. I believe both
Erected.
sides have been wrong. Religion and science, rightly understood, are not enemies. In fact, rightly understood, they complement each other. The purpose of tonight's...
Is being rightly understood the same thing as being rightly seasoned? Sorry, that's one of those verbiages that just bothers me, saying something is rightly... It's one of those archaic things that just gets under my skin.
debate is to begin to tear down that wall.
Mr. Hovind, tear down this wall.
Anyone who knows anything about me is aware of my belief that the issue of special creation versus evolution is the foundational premise for all truth. I hold to the view of biblical creation because I believe in the inerrancy of Scripture, and I accept totally the Genesis account of creation. Millions of persons hold to that position. However...
Yeah, well, they dumb. Got him.
There are millions of persons who do not believe in scientific creation. They accept various theories of evolution. And tonight we have one scientist who holds to the evolution view of man. Those who believe in special creation have been greatly disturbed that in many public schools, evolution has been taught as fact. To compound the problem, many educators and some media personalities have maintained publicly that there is no scientific evidence to support the concept of special creation. They have maintained that special creation is merely a religious philosophy and is not supportable in the arena of science. Therefore, the Old Time Gospel Hour proposed earlier this year that a nationally televised debate...
And I mock the rightly thing, but this guy is still from a generation, I say this guy like it's not Jerry Falwell, from a generation where there's that little subtle thing. And I just forgot what exactly he said, the exact phrasing. Let's play back and I'll point it out.
The Old Time Gospel Hour proposed earlier this year that
I think it was that. It was the earlier this year where little trailing R's and stuff will get cut off. You think I'd not like that, but I actually kind of enjoy it. Just a certain earlier 20th century way of speaking. I forget the exact details on the accent, but yeah.
Nationally televised debate should be conducted between two eminent scientists who hold opposite viewpoints on the origin of species.
Except one's an actual scientist and the other is just a creationist nut job.
Let me now introduce the participants in tonight's debate. First, from the Department of Chemistry at the University of California, San Diego, Dr. Russell F. Doolittle. Dr. Doolittle will argue the evolution theory. Next...
I'm sorry, but is that not coincidentally just the most fitting name? That the dude is literally Dr. Doolittle?
From the Institute for Creation Research, also in San Diego, Dr. Dwayne Gish. Gentlemen, welcome to Liberty Mountain and to Lynchburg, Virginia. The ground rules for tonight's debate are as follows. Each gentleman will have 18 minutes to make a position statement.
Bah, you're right. That is a subtle leftover from the transatlantic accent, which I just love. Love it.
Then 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then 2 minutes for summary. We request that all applause be held.
You want to know an accent I hate? News anchor accent. Because it's so blatantly artificial. And they try to be like, oh, well, you want to not have an accent, so, stuff doesn't sound regional, everything's just sort of uniform. And it's like, why? Why is that the thing? It sounds terrible no matter who says it. Some people worse than others. And it seems like the more somebody's trying to hide their own accent, ironically, the better they are at hiding it, but it makes their speech sound even less natural. So, like, if you barely have an accent to begin with, it won't sound so bad. But if you do have an accent, you, like, overcompensate in some noticeable way. I can't stand it. Don't get me started. As far as I want to go, I will ramble on about that till my dying days. Fuck the news anchor accent. Let's keep going.
Until each speaker concludes his remarks. By the toss of a coin, it has been determined that Dr. Doolittle will speak first. Dr. Doolittle.
Hang on. We got to go back. Did you say coin in an oddly charming way?
It has been determined that Dr. Doolittle will speak by the toss of a coin.
Of a coin. Of a coin. Oh, I love it. Oh, man. The little things that keep me entertained because I know I'm in for a massive headache. Oh. Let the debate begin. At the toss of a coin. Oh, wait, I have a coin right here. Hang on. Wait, no, I don't. Hang on, let me open this up. There we go. Let me toss a coin. You couldn't really hear it. It landed heads. So there you go. 1/4 American dollar, which is worth fuck all these days. All right, let's continue.
It has been determined that Dr. Doolittle will speak first. Dr. Doolittle.
I'm here this evening against the advice of many of my colleagues. They have...
Yo, with the Luftwaffles doing their dive bombing practice, please proceed to the other end of Kentucky. All right, we can hear you.
pointed out to me that this is a no-win situation, that in fact, how can you come into the home of the old-time gospel hour and really hope to convince anyone of the factual nature of evolution? They point out...
It should be telling that when you have these, like, actual scientists, not just, us having our fun, or even scientifically more well-educated people, when you have, like, these proper debates, as they were back in the day, and they're just like, there's not really any way to convince anybody. It's like, it's just the fact that that's always the initial go-to should be telling of the rampant opposition the other side has to any aspect of reality. I mean, it's just like, it's like the Ken Ham, Bill Nye thing. What would change your mind? Evidence. What would change your mind? Nothing. It's like, okay, that shows the problem.
Also that it's impossible for anyone in 15 minutes to outline the tremendous amount of data and information that leads to the concept of evolution. They point out that this is a very different debate than kinds of debate I may have had with Dr. Gish on other occasions. It's not the same as going over to the student cafeteria and exchanging a few words here and there, skirmishing a bit about this or that. But in fact, this is an enormous media event, witnessed by millions of people, perhaps.
Sunday at the old-time gospel hour. Dr. Doolittle versus Dwayne Gish. 2 men will enter. 1 man will leave. And then the other will leave. And then they'll go home. This Sunday. You'll pay for the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. I can't keep up this voice anymore. It's making my throat hurt.
And that what it will amount to is really publicity for a special cause. They point out that I'm really a stage prop here, just sort of a necessary fixture, and that there's no way that I could convince anybody to change their mind about this particular view. Now, of course, they're right, and the question comes up, why in the world am I here tonight? And I'll tell you that the reason I'm here tonight is that I really am a concerned citizen, and I'm worried.
Oh, I thought it was because you lost a bet at the bar last night, but okay.
Worried about the future of education in America. I'm very much worried about what has happened during this past year in Arkansas and Louisiana, where in fact the state legislatures have seen fit to award the equal time teaching of creation and creation science in the science curriculum. To me, this is a travesty. Even though, of course, being way out there on the frontier in California, I perhaps might not have been moved to be some sort of carpetbagger and come all the way out here to Lynchburg and do it, if it hadn't been that, in fact, various things going on in the state of California also have moved me to my concern. There was a poll that appeared last May showing that, in fact, half the people in California wouldn't mind if, in fact, equal time were given to the teaching of creation alongside of evolution. Now, this
This must have been before California became liberal hippie haven.
seems so alien to me, that as evolution is a part of science, whereas creation and so-called creation science is a religion, and our country was founded on this principle of keeping the two separate. It just seems so strange that I felt I must come here and speak out. Now, in California, something else happened last year, the events of which moved me very much to come here and try to be a spokesman in speaking in opposition to people who call themselves creation scientists. These events occurred in Livermore, California. About a year ago, parents found that their children were coming home from the 5th and 6th grade of a particular school and were telling their parents stories about science class that smacked very much of fundamentalist religion. And in fact, after it went through a period where various committees were faced with the traditional dilemma of teacher freedom versus what's going on in the classroom, it was found that a teacher had taken it upon himself to introduce creation science teaching in the classroom in Livermore, California, without any mandate from the people who lived in that community. In fact, when this committee went in and inspected, they found that it was a virtual propaganda campaign that was nothing short of indoctrination. They found that there were 8 different film strips with accompanying cassette audio. They had 8 different audio cassettes besides, 6 hardbound books, 24 paperback books, 8 pamphlets, 40 copies of 8 different newspapers, all bearing the creationist stamp. The overwhelming majority of these materials emanated from the creation press, but I've got the name here someplace and got it wrong, but it's Dr. Gish's institution. It is the Creation Life Publishers that are an arm of Christian Heritage College, the home base of the Institute of Creation Research. Some of these materials contain such statements as, evolution is the best tool Satan has to destroy the minds of young people. There were many of them, and in fact,
Yeah, the phrase smacked of. I've heard it a few times in contemporary, I want to say late 70s. A couple of things would be about the earliest that I can recall having heard it documented. Like, documented in use. Y'all know what I mean.
thought about this debate tonight, I thought the best way for me to make my point, not necessarily with the people here in Lynchburg, but with the heart of America that I hope will have some sense about this, is to read from these materials to show what you're getting into if you want to follow Mr. Falwell's advice about putting creation science into the curriculum.
Ooh, we're going to get to see what exactly was being said and what was being published at the time period. Nice, nice. I'm glad we got some with this. I still want to know what exact time period this is, because I can't tell. It's all blurring together. You know, it's kind of like the Doctor Who intro. Everything just blurring together with really cool music in the background.
Right, most of these materials were authored by Drs. Gish, Drs. Morris, Mr. Parker, and Bliss, and I'd like to use them now to just tell you what it was that so upset me. I'm going to start with one particular one called Dry Bones, probably familiar to many of you in the audience. Dry Bones is purportedly an article or a book about fossils. And what it's supposed to do is show, in fact, how the fossil record can be interpreted in terms of creation, special creation. This book is in the form of a dialogue between a father and his two young children, David and Diane, and its message is to explain how the fossils are just a natural result.
Little ditty about Dave and Diane. Sorry, had to.
Of the great Noah flood, Noah and his ark, all about 3,000 years ago or several thousand years ago. Let me just read to you a few passages. Diane has just inquired about a fossil snail that David had found, and her father has just explained.
So, smack dove is apparently a pretty old saying, and I guess just here in the U.S. it only became prevalent relatively recently, or at least would be documented in casual speech relatively recently, or would have been documented. I don't know. Oh no, I'm not a linguist. I like the stuff, but I'm not a linguist. It's cool stuff, though.
That it was drowned when Noah's flood covered the earth. I'm going to start with a further father talking here. He says, here's another picture of another extinct creature, Diane. Do you know what it is? She says, of course, it's a dinosaur. Did dinosaurs live when Noah lived, Dad? And that's what I think, he says. The way it looks, dinosaurs were drowned in the flood, too. Besides, what did we see on our camping trip last summer? Do you remember the Paluxy River near Glen Rose, Texas? Oh, yes, we saw footprints of man and dinosaur together. I guess man and dinosaur had to live together if they could make footprints at the same time. Now, in fact, folks, I have to just tell you that the Paluxy human footprints with dinosaur footprints ranks among the greatest frauds of our time.
And I just have to say, can we appreciate the way this man says dinosaur and frauds? I don't know why I'm so focused on the way people are speaking right now. I guess it's just the accents are really, really appealing to me. I miss those kinds of accents.
The locals down in Texas simply carve them in among the dinosaur tracks to sell to the tourists. Now, the thing that is most astounding to me is that, in fact, the creationists well know this, and then on occasion they will even admit it, even in print once or twice. But there is Dry Bones still out there in the classroom, and it even recommends a film down the bottom here, Footprints in Stone, that follows the same line, available from the Films for Christ. Let me continue. I want to go on with the dinosaur business here. By the way, Dad, if dinosaurs were alive when the flood came, did Noah have to take them in the ark? He surely did. God told Noah to take at least one pair of all the dry land animals. So here we have now dinosaurs, which of course were extinct.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, just exactly which year this is.
Long before mankind appeared on the earth, going off in Noah's ark, in this particular book being used in the 5th and 6th class.
So you're telling me this debate is older than me. Beautiful. Okay, maybe the opening is done through Scanimate, and that would actually track with the time period.
Grades at a Livermore public school last year. He went on. They confirmed that the reason that Noah had to have this flood, because he had to make these animals extinct because our sins made the world so bad. And so it goes on in this little book. I'd like to continue one more because now we want to get into the case of what does it have to do with science and evolution. It says now, Dad, you were telling me that the fossils were probably things drowned in the flood, right? Yes, Dave. He's talking to Dave now. And so the fossils were alive.
Okay, so cumulative here. Dinosaur business. Hey, so there is a Wendy's, the fast food restaurant training tape that has Dave Thomas, the founder, talking, and he says, and this is what all the comments are. At one point, he says the phrase, "The best hamburger in the business." It's just so perfectly delivered. Oh man. That's the comment. That's it. Oh, the kinds of things that become, little self-contained memes, little references, and if you know, kind of thing.
Alive at Noah's time and are probably only a few thousand years old, right? Right. Well, my friend who told me about evolution showed me a book. It said that fossils are millions of years old. He said you could prove it with uranium dating. If you use uranium to date fossil rocks, Father said, sometimes, bold print, you do get ages in millions of years. But did your friend also tell you about scientists at Oak Ridge National Lab? No, what about them, Dad? They used uranium dating on wood, in rocks of the dinosaur group, and got ages of only thousands of years. Now, quite apart from the fact that there's no uranium in wood, I'd like to know what those Oak Ridge scientists had in mind. I'd like you Oak Ridge people to write in and tell me.
Hey, I'll give it to you. If this is 1981, it was 5 years before a certain RBMK reactor experienced a critical failure in northern Ukraine. But following that, I'm sure there's some places you can find uranium in wood. Just saying.
Come clean now. How is it that, in fact, you think those dinosaur prints are only a few thousand years old? That's hokum. I think that the only thing that we can ever say is that any implication that dinosaurs lived a few thousand years ago is sheer gobbledygook. Now, going on to read one last passage here, since I think it really makes my case. I guess uranium isn't proof after all, is it? I don't think it is, Dad says. But don't just take my word for it, David. You read what the Bible says. Study science for yourself when you get older. I want to know what you think for your own good reasons. You know, Dad, I was just thinking, if there isn't really any proof of evolution, why do people believe it? Like that Dr. Doolittle fellow. Not because of the fossils, Dad says, that's for sure. The fossils go along.
You want to talk about fossils? Look at the people in the audience. Oh, man. None of those people probably lived to see the turning of the millennium. The ones we were, looking at up close right there. They looked positively ancient.
Along with creation. But I can tell you why I once believed in evolution. And now, capital letters, you believed in evolution. Dad. Yes, I did, David. I even, boy, this is like the confession of St. Augustine here. I even taught it in college for 7 years. Really? Why did you believe in evolution, Dad? I thought, bold print, I believed it because of all the evidence. I really believed it.
Yo, I was just looking at a whole compilation of those whatchamacallit commercials. They were trippy. I thought they were trippy back then. Watching them now. Woo-hoo! There had to be some kind of narcotics involved.
Because I didn't believe in God. I'd like to read that passage again, because as far as I'm concerned, that's why we're here tonight, and that's what this debate is all about. I thought I believed it because of all the evidence. I really believed it because I didn't believe in God. And as I interpret that, it says, if you only consider the evidence, then you'll accept evolution. But it's only when you go to the mystical and the supernatural that you find yourself forced to deny it. Of course, I could be accused of some vivid reading here and taking things out of context. After all, you know where I come from. So let me read you a letter from a citizen in Livermore. It happens to be an open letter. It's from Dr. Edward Teller. Dr. Edward Teller is a famous atomic physicist, father of the you-know-what. And not...
I love it. That sounds like some... If YouTube was around in the 80s, that sounds like the kind of censorship. I remember on... As you take your Commodore PET and log into YouTube, remember you will get a terms of service violation if you mention the atomic bomb or East Berlin. Yeah, you can't mention those.
Usually known as a reflex liberal, and I'd like to read a few lines. He wrote about dry bones after he saw it. He said, dry bones, whose use in the public schools in Livermore, etc., dinosaurs are seen lying restfully in Noah's Ark. He says, as a fantasy, this is charming, and many a child will love to see it. But it is not presented as a fairy tale. The book advocates the strict literal interpretation of biblical creation. It misrepresents science, Darwinism, and the modern method of establishing dates of past events using radioactive substances, though this method has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. That's an open letter from Dr. Edward Teller. Now, there were many, many other things in this science classroom that were extraordinary. There was one about learning about the sun. So there's a film strip. I have the strip that goes with the film strip with me. It says, I'm the sun, 93 million miles away. from you folks down there. My intelligent creator designed me to make a lot of different things happen from way up here. This is in the 5th and 6th grade classroom, Livermore, California, fall 1980. Another one down here. Did you notice your Earth is tilted at 23.5
The fall 1980 date checks out for this being a 1981 debate.
degrees? Our creator did this on purpose. It goes on. This mentions creator over and over and over again during this and sets the whole solar system as though an intelligent creator system had just gone out and done it in one day. All right, there were many, many more. There's the handy-dandy evolution refuter. I have a checkout list showing that many children were taking that one out. Dry Bones and others going along. Dinosaurs, Those Terrible Lizards by Dr. Gish. Many others. But now that I've told you why I'm here, now I'm going to move into what I consider to be the strong evidence for evolution.
You know, while I love hearing scientists speak, I'm really hoping we get to Gish soon, since he's the reason we're here, is to see what kind of crazy crap he says, compare and contrast it to what Kent says, and see if we can catch the Gish Gallop in action. That's my main goal here.
But all of that was to say that I'm concerned when materials of that sort are introduced in a classroom in with nothing short of a blitzkrieg to put one narrow point of view before people. With that, I'd like to start my own little slideshow here and quickly go through some of the evidence that I feel most favors a natural evolution of all life on this earth. Now, if I may see the first slide, I think it's going to go, it's over here on my left. It shows that, first of all, that there are many, many different fields that contribute to evolution. I'm only going to stress a few this evening, but they cover every aspect of science can be brought to bear, and it's all self-consistent. That's where its major strength comes, that everything adds up for everything else. And furthermore, it not only has to do with life on this earth, we could bring in astronomy to this picture, and on my second slide, I'll show you a picture of the galaxy Andromeda. This galaxy is, in fact, 2 million light years away. We ourselves are in a similar galaxy, the Milky Way, stretching so far across that it takes light almost 100,000 years to get from one side of our galaxy to another. Well, any place, I would contend, that a life occurs in either of those galaxies or any other one, it's going to evolve in the same way that we've seen it evolve here on this Earth. The next slide is just going to hurriedly introduce a little roughage, you might say, for the talk to show you that, in fact, there are a lot of molecules that occur out there in interstellar space besides the stars. I'd like to especially emphasize that many molecules made up of the small atoms, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and oxygen, the kind of which living things are made, occur out there in open space, including things like ammonia and water. And there's one up there on the list in particular, HCN, that's hydrogen cyanide, very key molecule for life, and I'm going to come back to that in a few minutes. But it's on the next slide now that I want to just stay and dote for a while. This gives some ages, and I think that here is one of the two fundamental things I'm going to try to emphasize during the course of my short talk here. One is how old the universe is and the Earth. There's a very big distinction between people who accept evolution and those who want to go with a biblical, a special creation account. That's
Sorry, there's just not much to comment on. He's just giving the facts as they were 1980, 1981 range. You know, it's just crazy that it's like, you know, all those organic compounds are out there in the universe. We don't need Magic Sky Daddy. And this was, you know, over 4 decades ago now. And we're still having these same discussions. So the whole debate sphere with this is pointless. We should just ridicule it and occasionally provide some commentary where necessary to reinforce the facts as they are. But you know, all the science has been done. All the understanding has been done. We know how this shit works. We know the stuff's out there. We know the processes. We don't know the exact details, but we know enough to be able to put 2 and 2 together and come up with something close to 4.
That's one. Then secondly, after that, I'm going to switch to the man ape-like ancestry business, taking the 2 most important ones here and cutting out all the in-between stuff, even though that's an enormous amount. All right, well, according to the principles that I accept, our universe is something of the order of 15 billion years old. There are a number of
And note again, this was in 1980-81 range, and he says 15 billion, where Kent will say that books in the 90s said 20 billion. It's like, can't even get your attempted lies accurate, Kent. I mean, I guess that would be the case with lies, but I mean, if he wanted to ridicule the time value, you think he'd still ridicule an accurate one, because he tries to in other ways.
ways of estimating this age, having to do with how big the universe is and how fast it's expanding and so on. But I want to go strictly, quickly now to the Earth.
Deviant, hello. We are watching a debate between a Dr. Doolittle, yes, that's a dude's actual name as we see here, and Dwayne Gish, because I wanted to do something a little different.
The Earth should be in here on this list at something of the order of 4.6 times 10 to the ninth, that is to say 4.6 billion years old. I think that...
Yeah, but he's also a professional scientist and looks like he made, good money. I am not as successful. So charisma be damned.
Almost all scientists agree that that's its age. And I want to tell you how they know that. They got it first by dating, radio dating meteorites. They used...
I dated a meteorite once. It was all hard. Very cold to the touch. Very unpleasant. Didn't talk much, didn't pay for dinner, nothing. I told it scoot over, honey, and it just sat there.
Three different...
that's something interesting is that generally speaking, your average meteorite and stuff, when it hits the ground, it's cold. Because in coming through the atmosphere, the material that does heat up is ablated off, because it does get so hot, it's just going to melt and slag away and carry heat with it. So the core of the rock isn't going to have time to heat up, so it's still going to be cold as from deep space, which is pretty awesome. I would love to be near an impact and be able to touch something that's still cold from being out there for 5 billion years. And now it's a molten potato in my backyard. That'd be cool. Then the government would come and take it away. Bastards.
Methods, not just one. They use the uranium decay series to lead as one principal way that can be used. They use another one using the elements potassium and argon. They use another one using rubidium and strontium. And all three of these gave the same age. Now what they were dating here were meteorites. And the assumption at that time...
I just thought about something. He listed the dating methods in the same way Kent does if they get brought up. And then it got me thinking that there is a definite non-zero chance, and the odds are actually pretty high, that Kent Hovind has watched this debate. That's a weird thought.
Was that meteorites, which are formed out in the outer reaches of our solar system, or presumably at the time that the solar system was formed, are an example of what the Earth might have been like in terms of its age when it was formed. Now, clearly, the surface of the Earth is weathered during all this time, and it's very hard to find rocks that are still in that pristine condition to give those old ages. The oldest rocks are only something of the order of 3 or 4 billion years old. On the other hand, the big confirmation of all this came when our astronauts actually went to the moon, and they brought back those moon rocks. And they brought those moon rocks back, and they were dated in the laboratory, and zingo, right on, 4.6 times 10 to the ninth, the exact same age as meteorites, the same age that all scientists that were seriously involved in this thought the Earth was. Now, at this point, I have to ask, because...
Yeah, it is something creationists should have to account for. Why is it that when we measure all these space rocks, where there hadn't been, active geological processes, these things that have been setting effectively in situ since their formation, that they all date to the same age that's not 6,000 years ago?
Because I feel this is so important, I'm going to try and pin Dr. Gish tonight down to tell me how old he thinks the Earth is. He doesn't like to come up with hard numbers on this in my previous experience, but I'm hoping America will be watching to see if he'll give us a number. And the reason is that creationists like to be a little slippery about this. There are some of them that like a very small number, a few will stretch it a little bit. For example, I have here a quote from Jerry Falwell, his famous Penthouse magazine interview, Penthouse, March 1981, no applause, page 151. Falwell said,
Okay, so we've definitely dated this to after March of 1981, so that still falls in line with the October 81 date. We're getting pretty well cemented on when this definitely happened. Not like we don't, not like I doubt the 1981 date at all. It's just interesting getting these little context clues to verify that, yeah, this definitely happened at least up to this period, and probably close to it, given you generally will use more recent sources than old ones, if more recent sources are better overall.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. If you read the first 3 chapters of Genesis carefully, there's a very clear, unlimited time span there. It could have been millions of years, could have been hundreds of millions of years.
Well, now he was 14 years into being, Mr. Churchy, but he didn't start CSE till right around the late 80s, early 90s. Before that, he was just kind of doing more basic stuff. So, I consider Hello, My Name is Kent Hovind to be the moment that he really became a proper active person doing this stuff, as opposed to just, your typical religious person who went around and did the occasional speaking role or something. That's when he was still teaching, the 15 years high school science, math, and all that other shit that he doesn't understand. Hovind?
Now that's Jerry Falwell's view about all this. I want to hear Dr. Gish say tonight how old he thinks. 30 seconds, I'm running out of time, it's incredible. All right, well, I have to really quickly go here. May I, in fact, quickly now just go through my slides. I just thought what I think is a 30-second flash here. These have been the fastest 18 minutes of my life. And if I'm now on my last slide, I've been squeezed out. My last slide just went by. I'm out of gas, and I think that...
That's interesting. They just cut him off right there. I would wonder if they do the same to Mr. Gish. But also, it'd be nice if more debates did do that just hard cut on things. Especially when you've got idiots on the other side who don't just try to monopolize things, because that's how people like Kent work. All right, let's get to what Gish has to say.
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Doolittle, but your time is up. And thank you.
And the crowd goes wild.
And now with his initial statement from the Institute of Creation Research, Dr. Dwayne Gish.
Boo.
Thank you, Dr. Falwell, Dr. Doolittle, ladies and gentlemen. There are 2 fundamentally different explanations for the origin of the universe and of the living things it contains. According to the theory of evolution, or as we should more properly call it, the evolution model, everything in our universe has come into being through mechanistic processes which are ascribed to properties inherent in matter.
Yeah. And your objection is Magic Man did a thing. It says so in a book. Seems like you understand the principle well. So you're just going to stick to the nuh-uh.
No supernatural intervention of any kind was involved. In fact, by definition, God is excluded. Thus, while not all evolutionists are atheists, the theory of evolution is an atheistic theory. According to this theory, all living things have arisen from a single one-celled organism, which in turn had arisen from a dead, inanimate world. This theory may be called the general theory of evolution, the particles-to-people theory, or as I sometimes call it, the fish-to-gish theory of evolution. On the other hand, after 120 years of Darwinism, a rapidly growing number of scientists have become convinced that natural laws and processes absolutely exclude the possibility that the universe could have created itself, and that the best available evidence demonstrates that living things could not, and in fact did not, arise from lower forms. These scientists have become convinced that the concept of creation is a much more credible explanation of the evidence related to origins.
And these scientists are fucking morons. And probably have no experience related to the subjects at hand, as tends to be the case. But let's see where he goes.
According to the concept of creation, or as it may be called, the creation model, the origin of the universe and all living forms came into being through the design, purpose, and deliberate acts of a supernatural creator. The creator using special processes not operating today.
What the hell were they taking notes on? Gish hasn't said anything of value so far. And I mean that, like, objectively. Like, he's just in his preamble, which is fine. But there's nothing to take notes on.
Created the stars, our solar system, and all basic types of plants and animals. Although there were no human witnesses to any of these events, creation can be inferred by the normal methods of science, observation.
Yes, the normal methods of science that show that everything has mechanistic causes, as you described earlier.
And logic, just as surely as we can all tell the difference between a pebble formed by natural processes and an arrowhead created with plan and purpose.
But as I mentioned to Kent regularly, in your view of the universe, everything is specially created, everything is engineered, everything is designed. So there is no natural world. Everything is intrinsically artificial. So you cannot make that contrast. By making that contrast, you acknowledge that there are things that do occur naturally and those that are created. So you can't describe the natural as created. You have to pick a side, one or the other.
Let us now dispense once and for all with the notion that this is a debate between science and religion. Each concept of origins is equally scientific and each is equally religious. In fact...
Oh, there we go. The same crap Kent says. Evolution is a religion. No. Whole creationist sphere needs to get out of their dogmatic thinking that everything has to be a religion or has to run on the fundamental constructs that they have with the idea of religion. Just not how things are.
Neither qualifies as a scientific theory. The first requirement of science is observation. Obviously, there were no human observers to the origin of the universe, the origin of life, or as a matter of fact, to the origin of a single living thing. These events were unique, unrepeatable, historical events of the past. Furthermore, even if evolution were occurring at the present time, it would require hundreds of thousands of years to produce the kind of change needed to document evolution. Ultimately, then, no theory of origins can be considered a scientific theory in a strict sense. Creation and evolution are inferences based on circumstantial evidence. And
no, creation is you people just making shit up because some book says a thing. Evolutionary theories and the understandings of science are from proper methodology, the scientific method being applied. Extends beyond your narrow view of just what you can see. You can infer plenty. That's kind of the key thing. And you know that. You're very aware of that. The classic case of if a crime is committed and no one's there to see it, but you have evidence pointing towards a certain chain of events, you can infer and be found correct on this stuff. The same thing happens with science, just on a broader scale. It's not a hard concept, but because it goes in the face of your magic fairy tale, you just got to go, nuh-uh, or you didn't say it happened. Yeah, we got the evidence to point towards it. We don't have evidence pointing towards your magical creation. You can lie and say we do, but we don't. You can go, nuh-uh, but that's not an argument. You can claim whatever you want, but you're just making the claim. That's it.
Predictions based on each model can be tested and compared with that circumstantial evidence. Among creationists are found those of almost all religious persuasions, except atheists. And among evolutionists are found those of almost all persuasions, including atheists. However, since evolution is a mechanistic, atheistic theory, it is a basic dogma of agnosticism, humanism, and atheism in general. The one-sided indoctrination of our students in this...
These poor people so enthralled with what this clown has to say. Because I'm not impressed at all so far with Gish. Supposed to be some great debater. Hovind sits there and talks about him like he's the second coming. This is weak.
This materialistic philosophy in the tax-supported public schools in our pluralistic democratic society is a violation of academic and religious freedoms.
And there goes the same thing Kent says. Your religion is being taught at taxpayer expense. No, Kent. No on so many levels. No, Dwayne. No on so many levels.
Furthermore, it is poor science and poor education.
Oh, yes, because Dwayne Gish is the person who can define what science is and isn't and can judge it accordingly. At least he has actual degrees from actual colleges with actual accreditation, because I decided to look it up real quick just to see. I don't know what those degrees were in. I didn't look that hard, but I saw that they were from actual reputable places. So at least he actually has an education. Obviously doesn't mean much. Doesn't know how to think. Doesn't know how to observe reality. Doesn't know how to understand anything, but it's better than Kent.
To remedy this intolerable situation, creation scientists are asking that, excluding the use of the Bible or religious literature of any kind, only the scientific evidence that can be adduced in favor of creation and evolution be presented.
I'm bored out of my mind. I want to go play Pac-Man. I got Pac-Man fever, and the only thing that can satiate it is quarters. Yes, I have a whole tube of quarters. If I ever find a payphone in the wild, I will be ready to make a call and be like, hey, I'm calling you from a payphone. And you know, just the novelty of it.
Thoroughly and fairly in our public schools. After students have had an opportunity to examine all the data, consider each alternative, and to weigh the implications and consequences of each position, then they should be challenged to decide for themselves which is more credible or reasonable. Now that is good education in the finest traditions of academic freedom. Now let us consider the available scientific evidence. According to the Big Bang theory of the origin of the universe, about 10 to 20 billion years ago, all the energy and matter of this entire universe were crammed into a cosmic egg of subatomic particles and radiation. Of course, no one...
Well, no. The subatomic particles formed a little while after the cosmic inflation point because the temperatures were too high for even them to exist. It was all just energy. Concentrated energy at the maximum temperature effectively possible. Forget exactly what you call it, but it involves the Planck length. I know that much. Maybe the Planck temperature? I'm not sure. But there is a maximum temperature. There's a maximum amount of hot something can get. And the universe was that at the first steps. Very beginning. Because, you know, that's how math works.
One has the foggiest notion where this cosmic egg came from or how it got there. Zap, there it was. Then, for some equally inexplicable reason, this cosmic egg exploded. And out of this initial chaos, our marvelously complex universe somehow created itself.
Wow, what a terrible way to explain Big Bang cosmology. Even back then. Good job. You're as incompetent as I thought, Gish.
A relatively short time after this explosion, we are told, the universe consisted of an expanding cloud of hydrogen with a minor amount of helium. The late Professor Harlow Shapley of Harvard University stated that some people piously proclaim in the beginning God. I say in the beginning hydrogen. He went on to say that starting with hydrogen, natural laws and time, one could explain the origin of the universe. Of course, he could do no such thing.
And now we move on to part 2.
But the idea was consistent with his philosophy. This reminds me that someone has said that hydrogen is an odorless, tasteless, invisible gas, which, if given enough time, becomes people. And
I mean, you can get enough of it. Yeah. No, it sounds crazy. But if you want, we can work through the steps. All the principles can be observed. They are understood. You get the math to back it up. You have some musty old book that isn't concordant with reality, and nuh-uh. Okay, Gish.
Of course, that is exactly what evolutionists do believe. According to evolution theory, then, disorder spontaneously generated order. Complexity arose from simplicity. Chaos created the cosmos.
That's all from your perspective, your arbitrary anthrocentric view on what is chaos, what is order, what is, improper, what is proper, what is, tidy, and what is, messy. The universe behaves as the universe behaves. It's not that hard a concept.
All by a process of self-transformation. According to this theory, the universe is an isolated system which began in a state of disorder and spontaneously.
Yeah, Deviant, that's why I did this, because and why the stream is titled what it is from the Gish to the Gallop, is because, yeah, playing Gish, did the Gish Gallop. I'm like, well, Kent brings him up and talks about him so highly, might as well take a look at one of his debates.
Transformed itself into the present highly ordered and complex universe. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that idea, that notion, is directly contradicted by the second law of thermodynamics.
No, it's not. Just love that these idiots think that scientists can come up with these principles, and they accept those principles. They'll accept the second law of thermodynamics just fine, but then that the scientists are somehow stupid or duplicitous enough that they're not going to pick up on the fact that the previous bit of stuff he threw out somehow violates that. If it did, they'd have made a stink about it. Obviously, it doesn't. But you don't know anything. You're Dwayne Gish. You're a creationist. You're a professional clown. That's all.
According to this law of science, an isolated system, that is, a system on which no work is being performed by an outside agency, and a system into which no energy is being brought in from the outside, can only become more disordered with time, never more ordered. Such a system will constantly become.
Define how much time it would take for the universe to get down into absolute disorder, or be completely reasonable that isolated pockets, given the properties of the universe, would behave under ways you would consider ordered, even if they're just, this order is an illusion emergent from chaos and from the fact that, patterns tend to emerge intrinsically from the noise, if you will. Stars, planets orbiting, the galaxies, the motion of them, all this. And, the whole idea of what eventually happens with the universe as time passes involves entropy reaching its peak. So it does involve everything finally, just sort of running out of steam in a sense, if you want to do a very layperson way of talking about it. Big freeze, some like to call it. Heat death of the universe. However, based on the scale of things, the math works out to an unimaginably long time in the future for that to take. And we're in a nice, very early slice of that long time scale. And they act like the energy's just gone, and it's like, no, there's still plenty of stuff going around. Everything's fine. We got plenty to roll with, baby. It's something that's always bothered me. I always bring up the second law, and they act like we're just supposed to have already, run out of steam in the universe. Like, how does it keep going? Doesn't the universe ever run out of gas? It's like, no, things are still pretty fine. There's a technical maximum amount of energy in the universe. Yeah, it's gonna take a long time for all of that to reach equilibrium. That's all there is to it.
More random, more disorderly. That is a natural law of this universe. Flying directly in the face of this natural law, evolutionists persist in believing that this universe is an isolated system which started in a state of disorder and transformed itself into a highly ordered and complex state. Creation scientists reject this totally anti-scientific notion. Furthermore, they asked, by what means of tortured logic can one assume that the very same processes and principles which are now leading towards destruction of this universe could also have been responsible for its origin in the first place? To believe that this universe created itself naturally is irrational and unscientific.
Well, you're using loaded language, created rather than just formed. And then the idea of itself rather than just it became an it exists as an emergent property of itself. Brute fact. And, you get so fussy when people bring up, God and ask questions on the origin of your deity or the limitations or capabilities of the deity, and you treat that as a brute fact. Why can't the universe be a brute fact?
Scientific. And if it could not have created itself naturally, then it had to be created supernaturally. If evolutionists really believe in science, they would abandon their faith in the God of evolution. Now let us consider the laws of probability, also a fundamental law of science. Every living cell on this earth, whether bacterial or human, is indescribably...
Here we go, fine-tuning.
...complex.
If it's so indescribably complex, why can we describe life pretty well? Why can we describe the structure of the cell, the nature of life, the way things work? Very, very well, even back then. Say it with me, everyone. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Yeah, I prefer the midichlorians myself, but just more creationist lies.
Marvelously coordinated in time and space, and exhibits purposefulness in every detail of its structure and function. The human body has a...
Except it doesn't, and it seems like we're a jumble of parts that just happen to work together, that seem to have just become emergent as, things changed. Develop heart, develop limbs, develop eyes, all this stuff, and look, here we are, we're here. I exist.
About 30 trillion cells of over 200 varieties, 12 billion of which are found in a 3-pound human brain. In the brain, there are at least 120 trillion connections.
Okay. That's great. And we've seen simpler brains, and we've seen even larger, more complicated brains. And we've got all evidence of how brains developed from basic nervous systems, basic cellular communication pathways into dedicated systems, what one would call a prototype nervous system, into spinal columns, into spinal cords, into primitive brains, and on up. Again, seems to be emergent property of just life doing what life does.
The most incredibly complex arrangement of matter in the universe. The evolutionists would have us believe that this marvelously designed...
Oh, I don't know. I find this clown pretty punchable, honestly. I am not liking Gish at all.
An unbelievably complex human body and millions of other equally complex plants and animals were produced through millions of random chance mistakes or mutations.
Again, the loaded language. This thing's more loaded than the baked potato I got last week. Okay, I didn't get a baked potato last week, but still, y'all know what a loaded baked potato is. It's a joke, right? Just gotta be honest. Can't afford baked potatoes right now. If you want to change that, please donate. Links down below, or what have you. Shilling. But no, seriously, it is a severely loaded language. And it's just dishonest. It's not random. One could describe it as random, but not in the way he wants it to seem. There's a methodology behind this. There's a process behind adaptations that drive evolution. It's well understood, well explained. Tired of all of us having to say it over and over.
Evolutionist Lauren Isley, for example, declared that man is a long chain of DNA accidents taking place over billions of years. Carl Sagan was quoted in Time magazine as saying,
Carl Sagan. Never heard it pronounced like that before. And yes, he is just as punchable as on the same level as Kent. I don't like him at all. No, at least Kent gives me something to work with. This guy's just something special about Kent, not in the good way.
that only through the deaths of an immense number of slightly maladapted organisms are we, brains and all, here today.
Yes, the argument that evolution is a religion of death and that everything has to die for stuff to get better, rather than, just things naturally improving as they become slightly more fit, the populations become slightly more fit to their environment or the particular situations they're living in. Meanwhile, they're followers of a religion that specifically rewards you upon death, um, where a deity has killed everything on the planet, save for a small bit it saved, which seems kind of pointless. If everything was flawed, then why save any of it? But whatever, God's stupid. Um, contains The book contains many edicts to do all kinds of killing, um, and is just awful on a whole. And Christianity is a death cult. I will not beat around the bush on that. I find Christianity to be a death cult, a very well disguised one, but it's still at the core a death cult. So there really wants to talk.
Creation scientists point out that when this notion is examined in the light of information theory and the laws of probability, that notion is simply preposterous. And we are finding an increasing number of scientists and mathematicians who, even though they are evolutionists, are saying the same thing. You just cannot generate even a single bacterial cell by such chance processes in 5 billion years, or 500
Except you can, because obviously it did happen.
billion years, as far as that's concerned, let alone the millions of complex species that now exist. Even at the molecular level, evolution is impossible.
That's the point where it's most obviously prevalent. The basic principles on molecular chemistry, especially when it involves organic chemistry, and especially when it involves, genetic code replicating. And yeah, I just called it genetic code. I hate doing that, but DNA replication, protein folding, gene expression. When you look at that mechanistically and you see how flawed yet still adaptable it is to those flaws, and you see how things can be expressed and how changes in genes can cause alterations to the expression, you begin to see very clearly how the evolutionary process works. It's absolutely beautiful. But it spits in the face of what your musty old book says, so you've got to go, nuh-uh.
Most proteins consist of several hundred amino acids, each arranged in precise sequence. And DNA and RNA usually consist of thousands of nucleotides, also arranged in precise order. The number of different possible ways these subunits can be arranged.
Everything's perfect because it was created perfect, even though it's really not. But I'm just going to say it is, because if I admit that it's not, it means that the Jesus didn't do a good job. Gish.
Is so incredibly astronomical that it is literally impossible for a single molecule of protein or DNA to have been generated by chance in 5 billion years.
Except, again, if you work at the basics of organic chemistry, you can see molecular structures forming that would be early amino acids and the like. Those exist naturally out in the cosmos. You get the right conditions, chemistry is going to do what chemistry does, and you get self-replicating molecules. Oh shit, we accidentally got life. It's not hard. I know jack diddly about this crap, but I can understand it. Also, I'm hungry because all I see right here is the word eat. Could be edic, because that O looks like a C boring into Gish's head. God, he looks like such a tool. I know this was 1981, but man, even for 1981, dude's a tool. Let's continue.
For example, calculations by Dr. Hubert P. Yockey, based on information theory, demonstrated that the most one could get by chance in a billion years is one single gene sufficient to code for a protein of only 49 amino acids. Of course, that's light
Citation needed.
years short of what would be required for the most primitive cell imaginable. While even to have the remotest chance of getting life started, we would have to have billions of tons each of hundreds of different protein molecules and billions of tons each of hundreds, if not thousands, of different DNA and RNA molecules. Here in my hand, I have a newspaper
Molecules.
article published August the 14th, 1981 in the Daily Express of London. The headlines say, when two skeptical scientists put their heads together and reach an amazing conclusion, there must be a God.
And I don't give a flying fuck what those two scientists, quote unquote, say. I just don't. Can they show the math? Can they show the work to prove such? Or are they just saying it? Because that's all I care about, is the actual fucking science. All right?
Who are these two atheists, or I should say ex-atheists? None other than the famous British astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle and Dr. Chandra Wickramasinghe, a mathematician and astronomer. These two scientists, working independently, calculated the mathematical probability of life starting spontaneously by some evolutionary process, taking the entire universe into account. They were astounded. They couldn't believe their results. The probability turned out to be zero, nil. They each then concluded that life had to be created and therefore there must be a God. Now, how could anyone ignore these conclusions, reached no less than by these two hard-nosed atheists, or I should say, again, ex-atheists? Ladies and gentlemen, based on the proved principles of chemical thermodynamics and kinetics, information theory, and
Chemical thermodynamics and kinetics. What?
the laws of probability, we can say that a mechanistic evolutionary origin of life is simply impossible. Earlier, I referred to evolution as the fish to Gish theory. Now, in this context, I think we should call it the too little to do little theory of evolution.
Wow, what a petty piece of shit. I mean, that little jabs like that are actually pretty par for the course in these kinds of discussions, and you find them all through history. We've always done that, and kind of, for lack of a better terms, in gentlemanly discussions. But I don't know. After dealing with Kent, it just feels like, scummy BS.
What about the fossil record? In that record, do we find gradual change from simple to complex demanded by evolution? Are museums overflowing with vast numbers of the transitional forms that should have been found if evolution is true? Well, our museums do contain millions of fossils, including those of over 250,000 different species. The available fossil record is much more than adequate to document evolution if true. However, what we find in the fossil record is not what is predicted based on evolution.
Except what we find is exactly what's predicted by evolution. He's going to go to the no transitional fossils thing, which I'm just waiting for it before I say my piece.
We have not found what we were told to look for ever since Darwin. The missing links are still missing.
No, they're not. Again, if you look at life as a gradient and you pick two colors in a color spectrum and you want to see the transition from the one color to another, all of those colors in between are transitional colors, even though they are proper colors in their own right. And if you only had some of the colors, you could infer the way the spectra went. And there would be, missing colors, sure, because you can't have an example in this case with fossils of every single fossil. In this hypothetical, you only have enough, let's say, computer data for only so many colors that survived, archive. I don't know. Oh no, I can't come up with a good analogy on the spot. But the whole thing is, you have enough to reconstruct stuff. And if you really want to get petty and get more granular with your stuff, okay, you know, we have, organism A and organism B. We have organism A.1, A.2, A.3. Sure. What about A.15? Okay, let's get granular and find one between A.1 and A.2. Oh, there's your A.15. It's sorry that went completely abstract, but I see where I'm going. It's like this is just the creationist thing. And then every time you find new species and can piece them together as part of the transition between a particular A and B, they just go nuh-uh, or they demand something even more and be like, no, it's not transitional enough. We need something more transitional. It's just mind-boggling. But of course, that's what you got to do to defend the Jesus.
What we do find is a sudden explosive appearance of a great variety of highly complex forms of life for which we have never found ancestors. Furthermore, we find that each basic type of plant and animal has appeared fully formed with no evidence of gradual change.
And there it is. There's where my color analogy goes. They act like you're supposed to literally find half a wing, half an arm, or something. It's literally children can see that that's stupid. Why? Because I saw that was dumb as a child. I knew that argument was garbage.
Evidence of intermediate or transitional forms are found. This is precisely the evidence predicted on the basis of creation.
All transitions are relative to the A and B point organisms that you're comparing things to. That's simple. There, made it concise.
Let us hear what some evolutionists have admitted about the fossil record. Dr. Corner, a Cambridge botanist, stated in a book published in 1961 that, quote, much evidence can be adduced in favor of evolution, but I still think that to the
Demon Outcast, there's no transition between the upper and lower kingdoms of Egypt forming into one unified kingdom. There's no evidence of that. There's no transitional periods. Nope, none of it.
Prejudiced, the fossil record of plants is in favor of creation. In an article published in the journal Evolution in 1974, Dr. David Kitts of the University of Oklahoma said, quote, despite the bright promise that paleontology, that is the fossil record, provides a means of seeing evolution, it has presented some nasty difficulties for evolutionists, the most notorious of which is the presence of gaps in the fossil record. Evolution requires intermediate forms between species, and paleontology does not provide them. End of quote. But what about Lucy?
Except, again, the universe isn't static. Our knowledge isn't static. We continually hunt for more stuff. So anything that doesn't meet your arbitrary criteria can and will likely be found eventually. We've seen enough specimens, and we have enough of a working model with the complementary evidence to know evolution happens. It really is that simple.
An ape that Donald Johanson claims walked upright, just like man, and therefore, he says,
and let the record show that I just hurt a deviant's brain, and or made her laugh. I actually can't make out the emoji. There you go. Okay, yeah. No, I actually just made her laugh. I don't know much about Egypt, but I know a few things. So got to throw a reference where I can. Oh man, we still got a while to go in this.
Should be placed at the base of the human family, and intermediate between ape and man. Since Johanson describes this creature as totally ape from the neck up, the only basis for the idea that this creature was a link between man and ape is the notion that it did walk upright. But did it really walk upright like you and I? Johanson says that his Lucy is the earliest and most primitive of a group of creatures whose scientific name is Australopithecus. But studies on supposedly more recent forms of Australopithecus by Lord Zuckerman, a famous British anatomist, and by Dr. Charles Oxnard, a professor at the University of Southern California, convinced them that these creatures did not walk upright like man and that they were not intermediate between ape and man.
Except that the hip structure for Australopithecus is totally for upright, as are other factors in their anatomy. The way the skull sets on the spine, for example, amongst others. Um, but Lucy's been argued to death, and we've found plenty of other hominid specimens that corroborate, and plenty other samples beyond just Lucy. Got a lot of Australopithecus. Got a whole damn family and a half, 3 families. I don't know. We got a lot of them.
In fact, in his book, Beyond the Ivory Tower, published in 1970, Lord Zuckerman states that if man evolved from an ape-like creature, he didn't leave a trace of that evolution in the fossil record. And while we're on this subject, we should remind ourselves of the famous Piltdown Man that stood for nearly 50 years as a human ancestor until shown to be a hoax, constructed from a modern ape's jaw and a modern human skull.
And who discovered that it was a hoax? Remind us of what type of people figured that out, Gish? Oh yeah, it was scientists. The same reason that all of your little particular, well, not yours particularly, like a lot of Carl Ball's crap that he has. The petrified this and the boot and the petrified shoe with a bone in it and all that crap. They won't let people actually study it scientifically because it'll be found to be a complete fraud.
And Nebraska Man, another creature hailed as an evolutionary ancestor of man that turned out to be nothing more than a pig's tooth.
Yep. And again, figured out by scientists that, hey, this ain't adding up, buddy.
Finally, evolutionists believe that some hairy, four-legged mammal that may have resembled a pig, cow, or buffalo evolved into whales, dolphins, and other marine mammals. One of our creation scientists, Luther Sunderland, has attempted to visualize what these intermediate...
You know how Ken Hovind always talks about his daddy? I think this is actually his daddy. This man did serve in World War II, which you think would make me respect him, but no. Being this much of an imbecile, this much of an asshole, and yeah, he's just been doing a normal debate, but still, at this stage in life, I'm like, if you're a creationist, you're probably just a straight up asshole. By design, pun intended, negates, helping save the world. Because we also don't know what kind of stuff this man might have done behind the scenes. Just never came out. I'm not accusing him of anything. I'm just saying, the more religious you are, the less I trust you.
Intermediates may have looked like. We see that on the screen. Now, my challenge to Dr. Doolittle and to all other evolutionists is this: if you don't like these suggestions, what are yours? When we come right down to any concrete case like this example, we see that the whole idea of evolution is absurd. Spatial creation is far more credible.
Why, yes, evolution is observed. Oh, you said absurd. I'm sorry. Through your accent, it sounded like you said evolution is observe. Okay. I mean, you were right with what I misheard.
Far more reasonable. Dr. Shapley gave us 2 choices: in the beginning God, or in the beginning hydrogen. I say that the overwhelming mass of the scientific evidence demands in the beginning God. Thank you.
And the Book of Chris demands you're a dumbass. I'm going to go with the Book of Chris because I personally know the author. Dude's kind of a dick, but, he comes around when you need him to.
If you'd like to get...
My name is Dwayne Gish. I got the brain of a fish. I don't know where else to go with the song.
Thank you, Dr. Gish. And now, with his rebuttal, Dr. Doolittle.
Dr. Gish continues with more of his illogical logic. If it can't be explained right now, then obviously if it can't be explained by natural causes, it must be supernatural. I have 2 rebuffs to this to start with. The first place, if it has to be supernatural, why only the Christian one? Why not all these non-Christian explanations that have been with us for centuries? It always seems to be that it only has to be his supernatural one. Secondly, just because we can't explain something now doesn't mean we won't be able to explain it in the future. Look at the last 100 years. We have discovered the world of the very small, the world of the very large. We've discovered viruses, bacteria, all these things. The whole notion of DNA and how it gets together in its self-assembly process is something we've only been on to for about 30 years now. So I think that there's no doubt that we will explain all this, any of the questions that he's raised, to everyone's satisfaction eventually. The question is whether we have to put everything on hold and go through a lot of mumbo-jumbo in the interim. Let me take some specifics. His thermodynamic one. Now, Dr. Gish raises this thermodynamic argument no matter where he goes. I'd like to take a page from his book and read from his own fellows. I'm reading now from Dr. J.A. Kramer, professor of physics at Wheaton, Illinois College, an acknowledged creationist. This isn't an evolutionist now, this is one of you, creationists. He says, if we are to believe that general evolution contradicts the second law, we must also conclude that all living organisms continually violate the law. He suggests that creationists stick to things that they are more competent in. Now, with regard...
Oh, what a burn. Oh, I love when those actually decent creationists see when someone else is full of crap and they call them out on it. Much like every other creationist has done to Kent Hovind, which again you think would be a wake-up call to him. But just right there to be like, stop doing the second law of thermodynamics. You're making yourself look silly. It's like, thank you.
regard to this fellow Yockey and his paper, this Dr. Gish raised this last year in a debate with me. I hadn't read the paper before. This time I've read it. It is shot through with errors and misassumptions. In fact, it is, as I've explained to Dr. Gish many times, the earliest proteins were undoubtedly very simple and small. They weren't the size of the ones that they always take for their examples. They got bigger by a process of gene duplication, biochemical Xerox I usually refer to it as.
Oh, biochemical Xerox. Man, that's a good one. I'm going to have to remember that.
They were inefficient at the beginning. They got better. There's been plenty of time. That's why the age of the Earth is so...
Hell, if it weren't for the fact that it uses a brand name, that would make a hell of a band title. Biochemical Xerox. Band title, band name. Sorry, my brain don't work very good, as you may or may not be aware.
important to the evolutionary argument. I'm still waiting to hear this evening when Dr. Gish tells us how old, in his view, the Earth is. Now, besides these things, and when it comes to this business about thermodynamics, probability, and so on, I have to say that either Dr. Gish understands, he refuses to understand, or he can't understand, and it's not for me to decide which tonight.
Saying the same things that we say about Kent nearly 45 years ago. Feels good.
Now, the thing that I am most concerned about here in this business about what view should pertain if you in fact find that evolution is offensive to your religion, to me that is a problem. I understand that you could have something very near and dear to you. I mean, after all, who wants to tell a child that Santa Claus doesn't exist or something of that sort? I can understand that it would be very sensitive if you believed a certain thing and you found your daughter or son being taught something differently in school. Now, I would reiterate that evolution is a scientific concept. It is completely secular. It has nothing to do with religion. It doesn't say anything about what you want to believe in that regard. Now, the analogy I would make is, should we not teach, for example, in the public schools, hygiene? Suppose we should say that we should not say, as we know, that germs cause disease. The reason we shouldn't say that germs cause disease, viruses, bacteria, etc., is because some religions don't accept that. Should we therefore say we have to give equal time to people who don't believe that?
You know, if I may have a minor soapbox moment here, I kind of hate the term germ when referring to bacteria and viruses. And I understand the germ concept, germination, that element of it being the root of the term. But it makes people, the layperson, think that there is a class of disease-causing organism called a germ in the same vein as a virus or bacteria. And it enables that sort of group logic that people do mistakenly, where they don't understand viruses and bacteria being fundamentally separate and the way you deal with them being fundamentally different. When you have a cold or something, and people are like, "Oh, did you get some antibiotics?" It's like colds are caused by a virus. Antibiotics will do nothing but make my body even weaker, killing all the good bacteria hanging out. In the nice symbiosis we got going on. And vice versa, thinking that a vaccine can do anything for a bacterial infection. That there's a plague vaccine, and it's like, no, it was a bacterial thing. You take antibiotics for that. It just really bothers me, and is a thing of my feeling that we need to more accurately describe things, especially when it comes to lay people's understanding, because it leads to bits of confusion. And sure, generally speaking, at least in America, you're not just going off getting antibiotics and crap all the time, but people can get a hold of stuff. People will have stuff left over, or have someone who's got something and they're sick. They don't want to go to a doctor, and they just take whatever on their own, and they just make things worse. If they were a little more informed, it might not be so bad.
It would be absurd. Should we teach or not teach that the earth is a globe? There are people, mostly on religious grounds, more fundamental than these people here, I would tell you, that believe the earth is flat. There are still flat earthers, and they find it in their rendering of the Bible, where they say that the four corners of the earth are referred to there. You don't.
Once again, nice pointing out that flat earthers are almost always fundamentally religious, extremely, religious fundamentalists. Generally speaking, your flat earthers tend not to be people who aren't fundamentalists in one way or another.
Find four corners when you have a sphere. Should we not teach that just because some religions don't? No, I say keep religions separate. Now I'd like to get on to this business that I missed in my main rendition about the ape-like ancestor in man, because this is in fact what it has all now gets people most aroused. Jerry Falwell, for example, in that quote I started to read earlier, said he wouldn't mind if in fact the earth were 100 million years old, as long as nobody starts to claim that man came from an ancestor that resembled apes. Now, of course, man did come from an ancestor that resembled apes, and we can prove it in many different ways. There are no gaps in the molecular fossil record. There's a complete set of transitional forms. And I can make this point, I think, very clearly to you. If you were going to go in and have a transplant, kidney, for example, you know that you go to the doctor, if you're a person these days who is any sort of current and would care about your health, and you had to have a transplant, you would certainly prefer to have that from an identical twin. If you don't have an identical twin, the doctor would say, well, you have a fraternal twin. The reason is that your molecules, your molecular constitution is more similar when you are, in fact, coming from either an egg or an egg fertilized in the same womb. Or if you can have that, a sibling of any sort would do, or a parent. And then after that, maybe a first cousin. Well, everybody appreciates that as you get further and further away in ancestry, the molecules become more different. Well, the same picture emerges when you compare all the molecules.
Dr. Doolittle, but your time is up.
Oh, come on.
And now with his rebuttal.
And they laugh. Up yours, audience.
Dr. Dwayne Gish.
Well, unfortunately, Dr. Doolittle wasted much of his time talking about the situation in the Livermore School District. What that teacher did, he used books which included reference to the Bible and material like that, which we have no intention of putting in the public schools. As a matter
Except you totally do, so don't fucking lie right there. I mean, the seeds for what is Project 2025 were being planted even back then. And this has been a long time. The religious right has been trying to push this kind of stuff, this battle, and all the other battles associated.
matter of fact, the material that we have prepared for public schools have been very carefully edited to remove any references to the Bible or religious literature of any kind. So all of that discussion had nothing to do with the discussion this evening. As a matter of fact, this is supposed to be a debate on the scientific evidence related.
Wow, sounding just like Hovind. I can't bring up something that's tangentially related to the key points and actual practical takeaways. We have to stay purely focused on the debate, thus not allowing any of the duplicitous nature of the creationists to be brought to anyone's attention, because we can't be having that now, can we?
The origins, you see, creation and evolution, not once what some teacher may have done in Livermore, California. Now, I'm surprised that Dr. Doolittle doesn't know the difference between living organisms and a dead, inanimate world or our universe. You see, of course we can exist, living things can exist, because we are living organisms. We have marvelous machinery. We
Living things can exist because we're living things. Film at 11.
can take in food, and we can use that food, you see. But our universe was an isolated system. You didn't bring anything into the universe, you see. You didn't have any means like that. Let me give you another example.
Okay, Gish, Dwayne, buddy. An individual organism and the amount of energy it uses, the amount of energy it can store, the amount that it takes in, all those quantities are still vastly tiny compared to the entire universe, the summation of reality, where on a purely, effectively binary scale, 0 is no energy and 1 is all the energy, the universe is a 1, and any one of us is a tiniest far off decimal point shy of 0. This lack of scale is ridiculous, and it's used as a kind of argument. This just, oh, I don't understand the scale of things, and I'm just going to make this appeal to the second law of thermodynamics because it sounds fancy and makes it seem like I know what I'm talking about. You don't know shit.
You know that automobiles don't usually run uphill, they usually run downhill. Well,
This just in, cars in 1981 could never go uphill. Nope. Every place was downhill. That's why you had to walk uphill 15 miles both ways to get to school, because cars couldn't go uphill.
you can get an automobile to go uphill, but you don't just bring in a can of gasoline and pour the gasoline over the car and light a match. That won't make it go uphill, it just goes up in smoke. What do you do if you want to get that car to go uphill? You have to take the gasoline, which is chemical energy, put it in your gas tank, which is fed into the motor. What does the motor do? It converts that chemical energy into mechanical energy.
And what the fuck does this have to do with anything, Gish? The only relation this has to anything is the biological principle of metabolism. And if that's as far as you're going with it, okay, you're just doing the same thing of making the Hovind-like comparison of, we can draw an analogy between this machine that we know is artificially made and these natural cells that, natural things don't exist in our universe. And that's what I'm going to say, because I'm secretly saying, life is a machine. Everything's artificial. I'm the T1000, Hovind.
Now the car will go uphill. So you have to have an energy conversion machine. And of course you have to have...
Yeah, let's look at the universe, Gish. Gravitational potential. That's a lot of potential energy. You can get a very large cloud of hydrogen. I mean, we're talking a lot of hydrogen. Enough that it begins to collapse under its own gravitational effects. And stellar fusion starts to happen. Seems like that gravitational potential energy has now been converted into a different kind of energy. You want to talk about energy so much, you don't realize the potential energy in the universe as it exists. It's massive, massive volume compared to what's been expelled, what's been spent. And even then, that spent energy, it's gone into beyond the light we see, from all around the galaxy, all the stars and everything, the galaxies, universe, everything we see out there. But the structures that have formed, the planetesimals and the like, the asteroid belt, our planets, and just our solar system's formation from the remnants of several other dead stars. That energy didn't go to waste. The fusion byproducts, especially during, the supernova that ended those stars, you're taking advantage of them right now. Molecular furnace that is supermassive stars. I don't know how to say this in a way that makes more sense. That isn't just this genuine. It's like, how do they miss this stuff? They have to be intentionally deceptive. They have to defend their feelings about religion. That reality isn't what we obviously observe, but that there's something special going on when, sadly, there isn't. Or, I say sadly there isn't. Honestly, I'm glad there isn't, because if Christianity was true, life would fucking suck more than it already does. Life would be even more meaningless than these guys want to act like we think it is. And I don't want to sit there and have the opportunity to either suffer forever or worship some despot for all eternity. I'd rather just cease to be. But apparently that's not an option in their ideas. So, I don't know. Religion's bullshit.
Somebody driving the automobile. If you don't have anybody driving the automobile, it doesn't go uphill, runs off into the ditch. You see, you have to satisfy certain conditions. You have to have an energy conversion machine and a proper control. On the hypothetical primordial Earth, you did not have an energy conversion machine. You had no control system.
Yeah, you did. If you want to draw those analogies, yeah. You have a cooling planet. You have water. You have molecules getting together and doing what they do. The fuck are you talking about, Gish?
And the idea that life could have spontaneously generated itself, contrary to the second law of thermodynamics, is not science.
Again, the loadedness of bringing in itself. Something can't create itself when it doesn't already exist. And in that case, it's already been created. The term makes no sense. And you want to rely on the fact that we subconsciously know it makes no sense to try to people try to associate that with the premise itself, when it's like, no, but life being an emergent property of the universe, of what happens when you get certain compounds together in the right conditions. That's there. I'm going to keep saying that's there. That's valid. Because it is. It's beyond demonstrable. It's literally what's happening in you right now as you were saying this. What's happening in me and what's happening in every single one of the awesome people listening to me. Chemicals doing what chemicals do. That's what life is, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is blind faith. Now, Dr. Doolittle has mentioned the age of the Earth. Now,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just did not expect this to sort of drain me the way it is. I'm just like, ugh, I do not have the energy to articulate myself like I normally do with this. It's like, wow, Gish is just so boring.
Concerning the age of the Earth, of course, evolutionists have no choice. They must believe in a very old Earth, since evolution demands an immensity of time. This debate is not about the time.
Oh, I am too, Savas. I am too.
Of origins, however, but about the how of origins. These are separate questions. In fact, some creationists agree with Dr. Doolittle.
Oh, I love how Doolittle was just looking at him like, are you serious, bruh? Are you serious? Let's look at that again.
How of origins. These are separate.
Look at that. He's like, you serious, mate? The fuck?
Question. In fact, some creationists agree with Dr. Doolittle that things seem quite old, while other creationists cite a large number of physical time clocks that indicate that the solar system and the universe must be quite young. Yet both groups of scientists agree that the scientific data demands creation. Dr. Doolittle has referred to the coalified wood. How could you date wood with uranium? The uranium is an intrusion into the coalified wood. The uranium is there, no problem. He mentions these Paluxy River tracks. Ladies and gentlemen, there were a few tracks carved during the Depression. When they ran out of tracks, didn't have any more to sell, they carved a few. But that doesn't mean that the tracks that have been uncovered in recent years in under a bank and so forth, they can't be carved. These aren't carved, these are genuine tracks. And so they are valid evidences.
I'm 99% sure these are the same ones that are clearly older tracks that had eroded and now resemble human feet, and that's actually animals running opposite directions, and one just happened to run a time after the first one in the other direction. And when the strata got buried, apparently, it's probably during a localized flood event or something. Yeah, I think that's the ones they're talking about in Glen Rose, Texas, I think. It's just like, okay, looks like a foot. That means a foot. Gotta find other evidence.
For at least the coexistence of man tracks with dinosaur tracks.
Flintstones wasn't a documentary.
And he referred to a statement by Dr. Parker. I know Dr. Parker personally. He's my colleague. Dr. Parker...
I know Dr. Parr personally. He's my colleague. Wow, I don't give a shit. That doesn't help your argument.
For a while after he became a Christian, was an evolutionist. It wasn't that, but his pursuit of the scientific evidence convinced him as a scientist that evolution cannot be true and that creation is a better explanation. Now, Dr. Doolittle has referred to meteorites and the moon, and you always get the right age. He didn't mention the fact that when they dated the moon rock, they got ages of all kinds, from almost a few thousand to many multiplied billions of years. They simply selected the date that had to be right, which had to be 4.6, you see, 4.6 billion. The trouble with these dating systems, there's too much picking and choosing. That's what I say about it. It's simply not a science.
I'm not sure on the details of the regolithic strata of the moon. Whatever. But you want to talk about picking and choosing, dude? That's kind of all religion is.
Scientific method. But again, I reiterate, that is not the question here tonight. How did things come about? Creation or evolution? I say the scientific evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of creation.
And you're overwhelmingly wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gish.
Boo, you suck.
And now, with his summary, Dr. Doolittle.
Are you going to cut him off? Because I swear Gish rambled longer than he gave Doolittle.
Still no age of the Earth in numbers there. I think that I don't know whether NASA's been lying to the president. Maybe the president ought to call up NASA and say, how old are those moon rocks? All right, summation. All living things, as we know them today, I would contend, are related through an enormous family tree. You, through your parents, your grandparents, your great-parents, and as reprehensible as it may seem to you, all the way back to bacteria. You have enzymes floating around in your system that can be shown unequivocally to have amino acid sequences that resemble those that occur in bacteria. They could not possibly come about by chance in any possible way. In contrast, I find creation science is a pseudoscience. It distorts, it misrepresents, we've seen it tonight, it ignores facts, it's based on a narrow religious dogmatism. To put it in the science classroom, I believe, is to handicap America. It's to cheat our children. For only by an understanding of the logic of evolution are we going to understand the problems that we face as a civilization today. Mankind, if he doesn't understand evolution, cannot understand ecology. He cannot understand how we're drowning in this earth from an overpopulation and overexploitation of resources.
Strong words. Strong words.
To ignore these facts, I would contend, is to live a life of pretense and will certainly lead us on the road down to a dinosaur-like extinction. Therefore, I naturally favor the view of evolution. I know that it is the only explanation for our being here tonight.
Well, the only explanation of the diversity of life on this planet. Not necessarily a quote-unquote being here as in an origins thing. Because that false equivocation is one I try to fight against. Evolution is not abiogenesis.
Thank you. And now Dr. Gish with his summary.
Boo.
Ladies and gentlemen, 3 or 4 centuries ago, the notion that the sun and other planets revolved around the earth was the dogma of the scientific establishment.
You mean the dogma of the church, who rallied against anyone proposing otherwise. And so science kind of, stayed with that. They kept in line, because that's what you do if you're stuck in a totalitarian hellscape. You play along or things don't go well for you.
Galileo faced determined opposition from fellow astronomers when he suggested otherwise.
And the church, don't forget the church.
Louis Pasteur and others, about a century ago, overturned the established dogma of centuries when they showed that living things never arise spontaneously from dead matter.
And yet you think we came from God making dust out of a man and then creating a rib woman. Yep. Eve was the original McRib. Yeah. And of course, you see, he didn't bring up the fact that the church were the primary ones to go against Galileo at all, because, you know, that's not going to help his narrative.
Today, even though thousands of scientists are creationists and the number is growing rapidly, the notion of evolution remains a stifling dogma. Evolutionists seek to smother all challenges from within or without the scientific and educational establishments, concealing the fallacies and weaknesses of the theory and adamantly opposing a hearing for the scientific case for creation. Why is this so? Certainly not because the notion of evolution is science and the concept of creation is religion. I can think of two possibilities. First, it may be that evolutionists consider that our students are too ignorant, too illiterate to be exposed to these competing ideas of origins. They must be protected from error and carefully indoctrinated in correct ideas by those who consider themselves to be the intellectual elite, the sole possessors of truth.
Oh, and there come the claims of conspiracy. You love to see it.
Secondly, having engendered this fragile tower of hypotheses piled on hypotheses where fact and fiction intermingle in an inextricable confusion, it may be that evolutionists are aware of the fact that the notion of evolution will fare badly if exposed to an open and determined challenge from creation scientists, and that if this is done, the majority of our students will accept creation as the better of the two concepts of origins. Whatever may be the case, it is urgent that our students be exposed to all of the evidence, all of the arguments on each side of this question.
Or instead of your teach to controversy bullshit, which are you going to teach every other competing theory of origins from every other religion and any other obscure scientific field or pseudo-scientific field? But also just, it doesn't get brought up because you don't bring up stork theory if you're talking about pregnancy. You don't bring up fantasy and fiction in science. You just don't. If you get offended by the fact that your life is built around a myth, tough shit.
So that these two alternative concepts of origins, creation and evolution, can compete freely in the marketplace of ideas.
Oh, look, and Gish just keeps on talking through the outro. At least Doolittle was polite enough to sorry, I had the on there, to stop talking once he got the I'm sorry. And hey, okay, at least fair point, they actually held Gish to a time limit.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Russell Doolittle of the University of California, San Diego, and Dr. Dwayne Gish of the Institute for Creation Research, San Diego, for being with us tonight for this most important debate. You have just witnessed a 1-hour nationally televised debate on one of the most important controversies of our time: scientific creation versus evolution. No 1-hour debate on such an important...
God, don't stare at his neck as he talks. That frog sack just jiggling around back there is hypnotically disturbing.
Important and involved topic could be complete. Our purpose is to whet your appetite, to encourage you to investigate the subject at greater length for yourself, in your personal reading, in your research, in school, at the library. And to help you do that and to assist you in remembering what you've heard in this debate, I would like to offer you a full transcript of this debate between Dr. Doolittle and Dr. Gish.
Oh, remember back when you could do that? You didn't get like a tape of the show. You could, but that would be kind of expensive. No, you could order a transcript of it. So you just have like the whole thing to just read. I mean, I never did it, but man, would it be cool? Just do that? It'd be a funny Patreon perk. Get a transcript of all my all of my my videos. Buy transcripts of my seminars. 3,000 pages, $150. Printing's expensive, Hovind.
We'll mail it to you free if you will simply dial the toll-free number now on your screen. Please include your name, address, and proper zip code. thank you for joining us tonight. I hope this debate has proved beneficial to you. It certainly has to me. I'm Jerry Falwell. Thank you for watching, and good night.
Boo, you smell. I mean, I just want to see what's at the end of this, because we still got like 2 minutes, so.
The preceding program has been paid for by the Old Time Gospel Hour in Lynchburg, Virginia. To receive a complimentary transcript of this evening's debate, simply write to Jerry Falwell, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24514.
Bruh, he doesn't have a P.O. box or an address or anything. They just send it to him. He's his own address. I've never seen that. Oh, that is incredible. I mean, I guess, like writing to the president or something. I think Carter had a thing of just Jimmy Carter, to Washington, D.C. back in his presidency. Still.
Again, that address is Jerry Falwell, Lynchburg, Virginia, 24514. Be sure to include your name, address, and proper zip code. Now,
yeah, none of them fancy zip codes with letters in them like they use in the UK or in fucking Canada. We gotta have real proper American zip codes with 5 numbers. And actually, I do think by this point the zip +4 had already. When did that come about? When did zip +4 actually come about? Okay, it was 1983 that the extended zip +4 formatting was done. So, yeah. Also, no, I never learned about zip +4 until I started noticing as an adult that mail I was receiving, because I didn't really get any mail as a kid or a teenager, would have the extra numbers on it. Like I actually paid attention and then learned about it. So, we're talking 2000, early 2000s. I learned about zip +4, even though it was from 1983. So go figure.
this is John Corrigan, thanking you for watching this special program. Remember to watch the Old Time Gospel Hour weekly in your area.
And, you got to give credit that they're sitting here talking, that they are. It could all be for show. Who knows what they're saying? If someone can read lips and wants to try to, figure this out, feel free. But that's a courtesy, you wouldn't have with Hovind. All right, well, time for them to show stills from the video capture, image capture dealie that they had set up as they were filming. I almost want to go back though to what that phone number was. Should I call it? I'm gonna call it. We're gonna see. What do I want to use? I'll use my Google Voice number. Let's see. Get the number pad out. 1-800-446-5000. Let's see what we get.
Thank you for calling sellmyjewelry.com, the premier luxury online buyer of fine jewelry.
Bruh,
Watches,
you want to sell your jewelry?
coins, and handbags for over 35 years.
Okay, so that's what that number goes to now. Oh man. Oh, I'm glad I did that. That was enjoyable. Cumulative. I don't have the tolerance in me to be all buddy-buddy with creationists nowadays. Yeah, exactly. Christopher Hitchens said if you gave Larry Falwell an enema, you could bury him in a shoebox. Holy crap. Hitchens was wild. And yeah, that shows how delayed the stream is, because I've already gone on and called the number by now. Oh man. Oh man. Well, this was fun. This was definitely one of the streams of all time. Didn't expect it to go for 2 hours, but honestly didn't know what I was expecting with this one. Um, I'm going to take a little break, and then I might come back with some Hovind. I'm just gonna check and see what's going on elsewhere in the world for a little while. Maybe get some food in me, and then we'll see where the night takes us. May save it for tomorrow, but I think I want to take tomorrow and just really relax. So yeah, I'll post in the Discord when something new's coming. Otherwise, much love. Catch everyone next time.